Hi, my fellow teachers. In my 20 years of teaching, I've asked myself this question over and over again. How can I make sure that my lesson is the best? That my students learn a lot, that my students want to come back, that my students enjoy themselves, and they say, English is fun. It's not easy. I must say that it's not easy. It's never been easy. And it's not like I've got it figured out and I always am spot on. I'm still on the chase. I'm still on the lookout for the best resources. That's pretty much the life of a teacher, I guess. But, you've probably all been there, right? Students who slouch, who come in like, I don't want to do this, whatever. You get that vibe. Obviously, this is something that is very it turns you down a bit. And then you're like, oh, I don't want to have another lesson with students who just don't want to be there. You know what I mean? So I've been thinking and I've been working on the best lessons or trying to make the best lessons. And then throughout this whole process, I've noticed that there are certain elements that are crucial for my students to actually be fully there to really learn and to start to actually say, I kind of like English. It's really cool. And this is what I want to do. And then what I'm also seeing is some of my students are like, yeah, I want to learn some more languages because, learning languages is fun. I mean, it's so human. I mean, learning languages for us is so human. So, if somebody says, I'm just not good with languages, or somebody says, I don't like languages, then it's kind of against our nature because we as human beings, speaking in language is this is our nature, right? This is so natural. So it all comes down to how we are being taught. And so this is this is our mission as teachers to help our students to see that language learning is amazing and it can be amazing. So let's dive in. I'm going to share with you a few elements, actually 6 elements that help our students to thrive in our classroom and to really enjoy themselves. So let's dive in. At the core of everything that I do, at the core of all of my planning is experiencing. So what we have to look at is every time your student comes into class, they are having a specific type of experience. And your job is to make sure that their experiences are positive. And so very often what I would see is if my students had a class with lots of worksheets and, open a book on page 35. Of course, at this point in my classes, there are no course books, but in the past, open your course book on page 35. It would be a total turn off, This is something they just hate so much. So then what would happen? My lesson would turn into a negative experience. So the whole point of planning a lesson and then carrying out a lesson is to make sure the experiences they have are positive. We don't want boredom. We want excitement. We want curiosity. Okay. We want interest. That's what we want, right? So we want to create the right type of experiences. And how can we do that? So now I'm going to share the 6 elements. The first one, and probably one of the most important ones, is sparking interest. If you take a look at the word experience, I took one of the letters I from it, and it's I for interest. So we want to spark interest in our students because this is where it all starts. If your students are not interested, there's no learning. There's no learning. They're not learning anything, okay? They're just disengaged. They're just their brains shut down. So it's really, really crucial that we keep them interested. So we want to spark interest. So then what you have to think about when you plan your lesson, you cannot think about what you would like to do, but rather you have to try to think what would my students enjoy? What would be enjoyable for them? And if you're just starting out, you probably will not know yet, which is kind of okay. But then with time, you're going to see through trial and error, which activities your students enjoy and which they don't. What I've noticed, for example, with my younger students, what they enjoy a lot is definitely songs, definitely stories, but interactive stories, definitely. Games, that's a big one. My students enjoy games. Some are competitive, some are non-competitive. But this is, games are a big part of our lessons because this is really huge. They love it. They enjoy it. They have a lot of fun with it, right? So these are definitely the three elements that my little students enjoy. And so whenever I plan my lessons, I make sure that that's what I have in my lessons. Okay. So this definitely sparks interest. So these are like, I would say, fundamental things that kids enjoy. Kids also enjoy drama. Kids enjoy movement. Kids enjoy going outside, and just like experiencing things in a different way that they would otherwise experience in a normal school setting, right? But it's all very general. So I would say really you have to explore like what is interesting to your students. And yes, just like I said, there are some fundamental things that kids enjoy, but there might be some groups where their interests might differ from one group to another. It is possible as well, but I would not go into too much detail today. I just wanted to tell you that sparking interest is very, very important and it's crucial. And you don't think about yourself, but you actually have to think about your students. What would they enjoy? What would make them want to do this, right? So that's the whole point. So for little ones, I'm just going to repeat that. Songs, definitely. Stories, interactive ones. This is very important. And games. So these are like three key elements that I like to use in my classroom. Number 2, create your lessons in such a way where your activities are multisensory. So they require that students use not just one sense, not just two senses, but all of their senses. Of course, I know how life looks. So maybe it's not always possible to engage every senses in every activity. I'm aware of that. But making sure that you make the most of it is the best, because this is how your students learn the best. And this is also how your students are more interested. Because let's just be honest, if you're just using, I don't know, let's say you're standing and just trying to explain all that stuff. And so kids are only using their sight and their hearing, that might be okay for, let's say, one third of your class. But the 2/3 of the class, of your students, might actually not be so much into that type of learning because they maybe are kinesthetics. And they need to move, they need to use their body in order to learn. So then you're missing out on that. And this is very important to make sure that every student who is in your class takes 100% from whatever you're trying to teach. Of course, this is the goal. Obviously, I guess it's not possible to have the 100% score each and every single time, but we are aiming for it. That's the goal, actually. And so when your students are in a class where you engage all of their senses, this is one of the deepest experiences ever. And I'm going back to that experience part. This is real experiencing. This is real life experiencing. Because how were babies experiencing language when they were learning a language? It was a multisensory experience. Okay, mommy changing a nappy and saying she's changing a nappy. Mommy, feeding the baby and then giving the bottle to the baby, saying, "Oh, you're drinking milk." It's a multisensory experience, and that's what we're trying to recreate in a classroom setting. It's not always possible, and I also want to say that, you want to think about it, and you really want to think how can I make sure that my students use not just one sense, not just two senses, but 3, 4, 5 senses, even the 6th sense. But you know what I mean. So it's very, very important to think about it. Okay, number 3, engagement. So keep them engaged. It's really, really important. Very often when we plan our lessons, we focus on one element and then we're going to build around that, whatever. And then what happens is we spark their interest. We make it into a multi-sensory experience. Everything is tick, tick. So for the first 15 minutes, everything is perfect. And then everything flops. And it's okay, that's it. I've lost my interest. It's nothing. So it's really important to make sure that when you plan your activities, you need to make sure that each activity is engaging. And how do you make it engaging? What's really crucial is that it's different. So I cannot imagine let's say, okay, so we're doing some activities on the screen, for example. So if you're planning 3 activities on the screen, one after the other, even though it might be, I don't know, even a multi-sensory experience and it's going to be super interesting, trust me, if you're going to do it for 45 minutes straight, at some point you're going to lose their engagement. So engagement is key here. And in order to get that engagement from your students, you need to plan the activities in such a way that they're just like, there's a mixture of different activities. So you start with the song, then you do a little story, then you do a little game. But for example, it can be like a board game, okay? So where they sit and they just play. But then another game, okay, you can have another game and it's going to be on the screen, for example. And then another game, it can be like a movement game. So kids and students feel like, it's like all different things, every 10, 15 minutes or even every 5 minutes, depending on the age of the kids. So that's when you're going to get the engagement. So really, when planning for your lesson, you really have to think about this aspect of lesson planning. Keep them engaged. It has to be dynamic. It has to be fast. It has to be super, super, super engaging. And remember, you need to keep their interest. And how do you do that? By mixing things up. That's pretty much how this works. Element number 4, hands-on activities. At my school, we love hands-on activities. And I gotta admit, guys, you have to have hands-on activities. This is when the true magic happens. This is when I see that my students are learning the language in the most natural way, because they're not really thinking about learning then. They're thinking about making something rather than learning a language. Of course, using that kind of activities for us as teachers, the goal is to teach the students, but the students do not feel like they're learning, but they feel like they're just having fun. And that's the whole point of it, right? So here at my school, for example, every other week, we organize workshops. This is part of the lessons. And like during these workshops, we either cook or we do some arts or crafts projects, which is really amazing. Kids love them. They are centered around like, different holidays. For example, it could be Christmas, Easter, spring, Halloween, or just like, these random days or like, Teddy Bear's Day. So then we have a theme. So we either cook something that is around that theme or we make something artsy or craftsy using that theme as well. So then students have a opportunity to actually use the language in the most natural way. You might actually ask, okay, what about those 6-year-olds who cannot speak at all? Yes, in the first months, that's actually true. And they're just going to listen. You can just like try to make them shadow you, for example. That's actually true. But still, they will not feel like they're learning anyways. They will feel like they're having fun anyways. So it's one of those things where you have that experience that is so fun. And I gotta admit, my students constantly come to me and ask me, like, when are we cooking again? When are we cooking again? When? And why do they ask me this question? Because they love it. They enjoy it. And I love it because I know that like I'll be able to create another PowerPoint where I'll be able to give them more vocab, more sentence structures, more grammar, but they will not see it. They will not see it. They will only see the thing that they will cook. That's it. And that's what's so amazing about it, because that's when you are able to really show your students that language is an amazing tool. And language is a tool, and language learning is fun, and it's just exciting in every way. And that's so amazing. Do you want to have students who go like, oh, English again? Or do you want to have students like, yeah, okay, great, we're cooking today. That's so amazing. Oh, if I could cook every single lesson, we would probably do that. But obviously these are English classes, so we have to explore other topics as well, not just cooking, obviously. And that's why we have like arts and crafts projects, and they're centered around a certain theme. So we can actually also have discussions and stuff that are related to that. So there is new vocab, there is new sentence structures, there is new grammar elements in it. So that's very important. But the hands-on experiences, if you're not doing that, you have to do it. Just like leave me, just like in the comments down below, just write to me if you would actually like to have workshops in your classes. And I can definitely send you some tips on how to do it and how to start, what would be the best way to do it. Element number 5, it's emotional context. When you think about it, look, when you spark interest in your students, when you engage your students, when your activities are multisensory experiences, when your students are doing hands-on activities, what does that create? Positive feelings, positive emotions. The more emotions, and the positive ones, you're able to evoke in your students each and every single lesson, the better the outcomes are going to be. The better your students are going to retain the information that you are trying to get across. They're going to simply learn better, faster, and in a more fun way. The emotional context is very important, and we want to make sure we create the right type of emotional context. Because if your students are coming to the class saying, English again, that's a negative emotional context, which creates negative connotations with English. So connection to English, and then they think that English sucks. English is not cool. English is terrible. And instead, if you create a positive emotional context in the classroom, then your students are going to connect learning a language to something very positive. They will have positive feelings about it, and they will want to explore it. And that's what we want. So remember about it. Remember when you're trying to plan your lesson to think what activity should I use? Just think about it. What emotions this is going to evoke. Positive or negative. Oh, this worksheet, if I'm going to do it that way, I guess I'm just going to get the negative vibe. So how can I make this into a positive thing, right? So if I have a boring worksheet, I try to gamify it. So kids love games. So then I try to create positive emotional vibe. That's what I do. So think about it each and every time you plan your lessons and your activities within the lessons. And element number 6, and I feel like this element is very often, how would I say this, overlooked. It is really overlooked. And this element is celebrate everything. When your students come to the class, they're not confident. Their language abilities usually are not that good, or there are none at all, right? So they just kind of feel self-conscious. So it's really important then is that you create this environment where you celebrate everything. So when you plan your lesson, when you plan your activities within the lesson, what's really important is you should even write celebrate it. When you finish an activity, celebrate it. And you do not celebrate that somebody did something well. I mean, of course you can. I'm not saying you should not do that. But we keep on forgetting that effort also matters. If somebody made an effort, it also matters. Just because they were not accurate doesn't mean they did not make an effort. And when they come to your class, you have to remember it's a learning experience for them. So we cannot have expectations that they're going to know everything and they're not going to make mistakes. We have to be okay with them making mistakes. So we have to celebrate the effort as much as possible. We have to celebrate the courage that somebody tried to do it. Even though they were not accurate, they made a mistake. They had a lot of courage in that. We want to celebrate effort. We want to celebrate courage. We want to celebrate them trying to do it. We want to celebrate mistakes, but not in a way yeah, you've done a mistake. No. Okay, thank you very much for making the mistake. So now I know what I need to teach you. That's the vibe you want to get, right? You know what I mean? And progress as well, progress. Even the slow one. Even turtles are okay, really. You're going to get different type of students, and that's okay. So you want to celebrate everything that happens in your class. And I'm talking about the positive stuff. Of course, you don't want to celebrate students who are disengaged, obviously. But then this is your task to make sure that they are engaged. This is really your task. But just make sure you celebrate everything. And the effort is really fundamental. And we forget about it as teachers. You think oh yeah, great. Okay, great. Okay, whatever. Oh, you made a mistake. And we just are like that. We should not be like that. We just should think about them as being these courageous people who came into the class to conquer the problems or whatever. You know what I mean? They are vulnerable in the class. They are the ones who don't know. So give them a shield. Give them this protective cloak, whatever. You know what I mean? Because then they're going to feel comfortable. And if they're going to feel comfortable in your class, they're going to learn way better. They will be more curious about the language. And that's what we want. That's what we want as teachers, right? So to wrap everything up, what I can say is that I want for our students to feel like learning is not a chore. Learning is fun. Learning is amazing. And learning is a positive thing, right? So that's what we want our students to feel. So remember that at the core of everything is the positive experiences you want to give to your students. So when you plan your lessons, you really have to remember about bringing that into your classroom. No more boring worksheets, no more boring fill in the blanks. Even if you have that and you have to do it, you have to ask yourself, how can I make it more interesting? Because number one, you have to make sure that you spark the interest in your students. Then number two, what is really important is you need to engage your students in a way where all the senses are engaged. That's the whole point. And number three, hands-on experiences. This is very, very important. You need to make sure that they are doing things, okay? Because then that's when learning happens subconsciously, pretty much. Even though it happens, but like the students don't really feel it that way. You need to keep them engaged as well. You need to make sure that they are engaged in each and every single time. It's not like they're engaged in one activity and then disengaged in another one. You need to make sure like throughout the whole lesson, they're super engaged. So you need to mix and match the activities you want to do with your students. The ones that are interesting, the ones that are hands-on, the ones that are multisensory. And then you also have to create like this emotional context because like, and of course I'm talking about the positive emotional context because that is when your students are going to want to come to your classes and they're going to learn way, way better because they're going to have these positive associations with your English. And then last one, which is very often overlooked, is celebrate everything. This is very, very important. Celebrate every aspect of the lesson, of your student progress, of your student effort. Like make sure you celebrate everything that your student tries to do.